You don't plan to meet your greatest enemy at the Spanish vineyard, but mine was just waiting for me. And no, it wasn't the wine. I applied to Anna Spain without big expectations. I knew how many incredible speakers submit each year, and I thought that the chances were slim. When the acceptance email arrived, I was more than surprised. Excited, of course, but also wondering why they picked me and not someone else. So, like anyone trying to prepare for the unknown, I overpacked. Not with the things I would never wear, only the ones I surely would, which apparently was still too many. Several pairs of shoes, my Jimmy shoes, the strappy sandals, and the suitcase barely closed. On a small transfer plane, it didn't even fit overhead. I dragged across the airports, clumsy and heavy. The journey itself was messy. I left Helsinki in the cold, landed in Munich to wait for a long 4 hours, and finally stepped into Spain, where the heat wrapped across like. And by the time I boarded the bus to Logroño, I was carrying not just luggage, but also the layers of exhaustion. Outside of the window, rows of the vineyards, the evening sun spilling across the hills, and my first real glimpse of Spain, and despite everything, it felt beautiful. When I finally reached Logroño, the air felt different, warmer, softer, carrying the faint of sweetness of grains from the hills that I have just passed. The speaker house was waiting, a villa tucked away on a quiet street. The door opened to a loafer and a smell of dinner already cooking. Someone showed me the fridge, which was overflowing with Rioja wine, each one promising late-night conversations on the terrace. That first evening set the tone. Terrace lights glowed, the glasses clinked, and the air turned cool against the bare shoulders. And, of course, I managed to spill the rosé wine all over my dress. But instead of embarrassment, there was only laughter. The kind that makes you realize you have been accepted into the circle, even before you said a word on a stage. Workshops came and went, and on the surface, everything looks perfect. The city was glowing in September light. The speaker house felt like summer camp for the grown-ups, and everything else ended with long dinners and too many glasses of Rioja. But inside, the doubts kept getting louder. Each time I opened my notebook, the pages felt heavier and the ink on my handwritten notes almost mocking me. My topic, the imposter syndrome, suddenly seemed too ordinary, too overused. Who would care about my story when the schedule was filled with deep technical talks? The smell of coffee clung to the pages that I rehearsed again and again, hoping that caffeine would trick me into the confidence. My fingers traced the paper until they smuggled into the graphite. My voice tested the sentences in an empty room. And still, the thought followed me everywhere. This isn't enough. You aren't enough. By the time the confidence hall opened its doors, my smile was in place. But underneath it, fear has already taken the front row. The morning of my talk arrived faster than I wanted. I have rehearsed too many times, but still the minutes ticked down. Every line I memorized started to dissolve. Backstage, my palms were damp and the throat dry. I could hear the low hum of the audience setting in, the shuffle of the chairs, the sudden burst of laughter, and the echo of microphone check. Each sound made my heart race faster. For a second, I seriously considered running, just slipping out of the back door, suitcase in hand, and pretending the trip was just being nothing but holiday. But the host looked at me, just one glance, one smile, and he whispered, "You are ready." The stage lights were blinding, hot against my face. The microphone felt cold and heavy, like anchor, and I wasn't sure I could hold through that. My voice cracked at first, thin and unsteady, but I kept going. I told them about the voice in my head, the one that whispers that you don't belong there. I told them how we hide behind the polished resumes and the clever code while quietly doubting ourselves. And as I spoke, something shifted. The room grew quiet in a special way, when people are not just listening, but hearing. When I finished, there was a heartbeat of silence, the kind that feels endless. And then the room broke into the applause. Not a polite, routine applause, but the kind that fills the air. Warm, heavy, almost physical. One by one, people came to me afterwards. A developer from New York, another from Madrid, someone from a tiny startup I'd never heard of. And they didn't just ask about my slides or my speech. They just said, "Thank you. You said something that we've never dared to say out loud." That was a twist. All this time, I thought that the enemy was the audience. Too smart, too critical, too impossible to impress. But it has never been them. It was my voice inside the head. And maybe for the first time, that voice was quiet. That evening, we wandered through the vineyards. The soil crunched softly under our shoes, the vines brushed against our arms, and the air was thick with the smell of the grapes. We tasted the wine straight from the barrels, oak, cherry, sweetness that lingered long after the glass was empty. At the Harvest Festival, the streets of Logroño were overflowing with music, drums, laughter, the rhythm of people dancing shoulder to shoulder. I let myself join them, a stranger carried by the crowd, no longer thinking about how I looked or whether I belonged. Living was harder than I thought. Watching the vineyards roll past from bus window, and I realized they looked different now. Or maybe I did. I had arrived convinced that I was here by mistake. I left knowing that I was exactly where I was meant to be.